name is Greta Washington McCoy, and I am the first Vice President of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Dallas Metropolitan Chapter. And I want to welcome you all to the very first session of our Sister-Nomics series in conjunction with the Coca-Cola Company. The title of this evening series session is Help Businesses Survive COVID-19. And again, tonight's sponsor is the Coca-Cola Company. Sister-Nomics is the trademarked economic empowerment program of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women aimed at increasing financial literacy and gender equity in all financial areas. It is our hope that when you leave tonight, you will have gained useful knowledge that will help you in your business to navigate the challenges of COVID-19. At this time, I want to share with you our program for the evening. Let me share. We will have our introduction of presenters, the presentation, our Q&A, and then we will wrap up this program. During the Q&A, if you have questions, you are allowed to post your questions in the chat, and one of our moderators will be able to grab your question from the chat and present them to our presenters. Also, if you have not already done so, please make sure that you complete the pre-assessment that you received when you signed up during registration. At the end of our presentation during wrap-up, we will be presenting 3 lucky people with one-on-one consultations with our presenters this evening. At this time, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Kimberly Thomas Grant, and she will present our speakers of the hour.
Good evening, everyone. Today we have Mr. James W. Lane. Mr. James W. Lane is a certified public accountant with more than 30 years of valuable experience in several tax positions. For more than a decade, Mr. Lane worked in St. Louis, Missouri as a finance and tax professional at Laclede Gas Company. Mr. Lane continued his career with PriceWaterhouseCooper LLP as a senior tax accountant. In 2002, Mr. Lane was relocated to Houston, Texas by ExxonMobil. There he worked in positions including handling international tax issues during many federal tax audits. In 2007, Mr. Lane became the regional tax manager for North American operations for Tenaris. Tenaris is one of the largest pipe manufacturers in the world and one of the leading corporations in Argentina. At Tenaris, Mr. Lane oversaw tax compliance and tax audits for both US and Canadian operations. In 2013, Mr. Lane became the Director of Federal Tax and US Operations for CEMEX. CEMEX serves as one of the main cement manufacturers in the world and one of the most prevalent companies in Mexico. In 2018, Mr. Lane opened the Houston branch of Emerge Financial Group. Emerge is a CPA firm servicing individuals and small business owners with their accounting, tax, estate, and finance compliance and planning endeavors. Today also joining us with Mr. Lane is Mr. Blair Bowden. Mr. Blair Bowden serves as Director of Business Development at Emerge Financial Group. He is an innovative sales and business development professional with an exceptional track record for cultivating relationships, closing deals, and building markets and territories. Skilled at prospecting and managing complex multi-tiered organizational accounts, he thrives at acting as a trusted advisor to his clients. Once Mr. Bowden gets a general understanding of his clients' needs, he enlists support for his internal team to create tailored solutions that will bring value to the client's businesses. Without further ado, please join me as we prepare to hear from both Mr. James W. Lane, CPA, and Mr. Blair Bowden. Mr. James Lane, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. And I'd like to thank the Coalition for sponsoring this program and giving me an opportunity to talk to fellow business owners. Today, as we stated, the main thing is helping businesses survive COVID-19. I need to, can you allow me to share so I can start showing my slides? I need, there we go. Thank you. So, see if I can get you the right slide, not my slides. All right. So, one of the things, and I guess one of the main things as we face COVID-19 is basically the way you did things normally have changed drastically. You see it every day with now everybody's got screens, they're not always seeing each other. You're doing Zoom calls all the time, which for some of us, we like doing them, some of them we don't like doing. But it's definitely a different way, or as some people say, a new normal. And as part of that new normal, you as business owners really are getting to, I would say, go from maybe day-to-day operations, just making sure your business is run, your employees are taken care of, to really having a full-time CEO hat on and trying to be strategic with your business, okay? And that's where we talk about in helping a business. COVID-19 is like a natural disaster, okay? And the same things that help you get through a natural disaster are the same things that will help you get through COVID-19. And there's usually 5 main considerations. How do I continue to service my customers? How are my employees affected? And can they still work? Can my vendors still deliver product and materials? Do I have the funds to survive? Where can I go to get additional funding or get help obtaining funding? So if you are in business, I will tell you the first thing you're going to hear me talk about, and the main part of this presentation will be about business continuity plan. And that business continuity plan is just basically assessing your business, determining the risk that could stop you from operating your business, and making sure you have the proper backups, okay? That includes actually recognizing who are your core customers. So in case that one customer that it turns out to be 80% of your business disappear, what is your option on maintaining your business and staying open, okay? Because for many of us, that's what's occurring. If you were in retail, in the restaurant business, or servicing restaurants, this is a very bad time. If you were servicing corporate America and you were doing conferences and seminars, you're still doing them, but you've probably changed to online. You're doing the Zoom, you're not getting to travel at all. Or you get to travel some places you don't. But there's different things that you're coming into. Are your employees, okay, is an employee sick? Do you have to quarantine? What are the rules for quarantine? Where do I get everybody tested? How long is that test good for me to know whether or not everybody can come back to work, okay? Where am I getting my products from? I mean, if you're getting your products from China early on, you were worried about whether that was coming in with, whether the COVID was coming in with those materials or not. And then it's funds. And that's where when we talk about funds, it's about having a good network, a good business relationship with your banker, your CPA, and at least one professional business organization. And that addresses how to get the funds to survive and where I can go to get additional funding. I can tell you early on, when Congress passed the stimulus packages, a lot of businesses were able to get the funds they needed to help them. But there were a lot of business and a lot of minority business that had not established the relationship they needed with their bankers and were not contacted in how to apply for loans, how to get the PPP, how to get the SBA loans, and all of those items. And that's where I tell you, if you had the right network, either your banker would have called to make sure you were okay, or your CPA would have offered it to you, or a professional organization. So I would recommend everyone become a member of, at the very least, if you're a minority, some chamber of commerce, either Black chambers of commerce or Hispanic chamber of commerce, because they know what government funding is there and they can help you get that information, and they have relationship with other bankers and things like that. Today, like I said, we're going to talk about the business continuity plan and then that network and why it's important to your business survival. Usually when we talk about a general business continuity plan, like I said, it's like estate planning. It's like drawing up your will. And most businesses never want to think about what would happen if something drastic happened. But at the same time, You should know, what are your core systems and processes? What's unpredictable? What do you have no control over? 75% of companies without continuity plans fail within 3 years. And when I give you that number, that means some disaster has occurred. I live in Houston. We have hurricanes on a pretty regular basis, and that was one of the main things with the last hurricane. There's still a lot of businesses that never opened back up because they were not ready for it. I think when we think about Katrina in New Orleans, the thing that you learn from there, almost every business owner has insurance, but do you have the right insurance? In New Orleans, you could have had the hurricane insurance, but because the levees broke, you actually got flooded. And a lot of insurance companies, well, you don't have flood insurance, so I'm not going to help you out. And that destroyed a lot of businesses. So understanding your risk and making sure you're properly insured and identifying what you need is going to help you survive these trying times. That also means identifying teams and assigning tasks that are essential. Which one of your workers are the ones that you can really count on if it's more than just you running the business? You have a staff of 5 to 50 people. Most likely, there's 4 or 5 people that are really keeping your business running, and the rest are doing their job, but they may or may not be essential. The question is, do they know it? Do you know how to get in contact with the ones that are essential, the ones that have the, I guess you say, the best contact with your customers or with getting the product out? And in that, you always need to know that everyone knows their responsibilities. Planning better for your company helps you recover from a disruption. And I guess as we talk through this, there's a lot of things with the business continuity plan, and you're going to hear me go back over the one thing is it takes time. You have to be strategic. You know your business, you know what you're selling, you know your customers. But when we start talking about being strategic, you're actually planning for the unknown. It's that classic example, and I always say, and you hear this a lot, are you playing chess or are you playing checkers? In checkers, you're really just jumping over a man and moving on and taking it. In chess, you're deciding how to actually take somebody's position, and you have to think 4 to 5 moves ahead of time. And in your business, to keep it running, you actually every day need to anticipate what may not happen. I mean, if you lived in Nashville this year, you survived COVID-19, you survived the tornado hitting the downtown area. It's Christmas, you're thinking everything's okay, and somebody decided to just blow up part of the downtown area. So if your business was down there, all of a sudden you didn't have your business. If you had the right plan, you had the right insurance, possibly you can recover. But the point being is there are always even man-made threats that you cannot say what the threat will be, but you need to have a plan on how to keep your business going in case that happens. And that's where we go with, will it be in place when it matters most? Basically, what I'll be telling you about is common sense. It's building and improving resilience, identifying key products and services. As you hear me talk over the next 20 or 30 minutes, or maybe 50 minutes, depending on how long-winded I get, you will not be able to do a business continuity plan as we talk. It is a very detailed thing because for every business, it is different. The main thing is understanding your business, the critical security incident. You have things that, this just talks about why you need it. Natural disaster, pandemic, ensures that you react and recover from a business disruption. You've seen it in retail. I mean, we went from every business shutting down in March and April, and then you're going back and everybody's got plastic shields up, you know. Now everybody's used to talking through that plastic glass. I grew up in St. Louis. I always realized that if I was talking to somebody through plastic glass, the only reason that was because there was some possibility that they would get robbed. So businesses in St. Louis City in the hood was worried about getting robbed. So you put your money through the little glass, you talk through the plastic. Here I am thinking that's all done. I'm living in Houston, it's all better. Now I'm still talking to people through plastic. Now because I don't want their breath on me at all. Okay, and they don't want your breath. So at the end of the day, it's just amazing how much plastic. So if you had a plastic business, you made a lot of money this year. Okay. If you're in a restaurant, you're now trying to decide how to get your food delivered, how you're taking it out to the curb, understanding the additional costs of using DoorDash or Uber Eats. When that was just 1 or 2 dinners, you didn't mind the cut that they took. Now you realize you need to almost create your own delivery service. These are the critical things in keeping your business going that you will face. But it would be better if part of your plan, you had a plan that allowed you to say, okay, if I needed to get my product to my customers, how many different ways can I do it? All right. Am I storing my information? Data is key here. Is all my data stored in the cloud? Is it on my server just in my office? Am I backing it up rather on a regular basis? And that's where the planning comes in. This slide just talks about the process of ensuring your critical business functions are prepared to react and to recover from business disruption. A robust program that incorporates specific plans. And I'll give you an example. Probably large corporations were the ones most prepared for this pandemic. And I know that's partly because when I worked at ExxonMobil in 2002 to 2007, they were already planning for a pandemic. They had a whole scenarios of who would call who, what work you would take, could you work from home? They converted everybody from desktops to laptops because while we were all in our nice offices, we're all spread out, they were like, if I need you to work from home, could you do it? And they would actually run through scenarios where they basically had you actually work from home. Every department had to do it for a couple of days just to see if it was viable. Now they were doing this all the way back in 2005, preparing for the pandemic. As a business owner, as the CEO of your company, you must start thinking strategically about the what ifs. The sad thing is, it seems like every year there is some what if that makes your business a little bit different. Sometimes it's just customers wanting different things and different products, but it is sometimes your whole business model might change. Most restaurants are not in the delivery of meals, but that's all they're doing now. They are various delivery services or at least walking it out the door. But it's resilience. You have to build and help yourself shield to stay in business. So then the question always is finding the time. When you're in your business day to day, depending on what your operation is, just keeping things going day to day, it does not allow you to think long term, which is why you must plan, 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 and plan. And I would tell you, if there's one thing as I talk and you listen to this program and you start listening to what's about your plan, whether you're ready, do you know, have you implemented a continuity plan since the COVID has hit you? What you'll find is, okay, are you the only most important employee in your business? Or have you identified someone who could take over for you in case you had to quarantine, in case you actually, heaven forbid, got sick? And large corporations, they have that plan. You need to have that plan as small business owners. And I would tell you at the very least, you should at least, and I would hope by now, have identified those important people to keep your business running. Okay? Because at the end of the day, you need that money coming in to either take care of your health benefits in case, heaven forbid, you're sick, or just keep your business going. What is the risk? Some can be minimized. Some of it, like I said, Christmas morning in Tennessee, there was nothing to prevent somebody just deciding they wanted their own glory and starting a bomb and killing themselves. But you can at least mitigate certain things. You know, if at the very least, even in your business right now, you have to worry about if it's going to flood, if a tornado is going to hit, if the power is going to go out. So you either have a generator as a backup, you have certain battery plugs that actually turn into generators so the electricity is not disrupted. You have made sure everything is on the cloud, I hope, by this time. But just like you prepare for that possible electric failure because of a storm, I'm saying basically it's just elevating and getting ready for the total disruption of your business and how long that lasts. As I said earlier, I'm originally from St. Louis. So one of the things in St. Louis that you're prepared for every winter is snow. We know that we're going to get a blizzard, 10, 12 inches, at least once a year. And we know that, okay, nobody's coming to work. So how do we keep things going? How do we make sure that the payrolls go out, even though we're not in the office? That's what those businesses did. And that's what you have to do. You have to either make sure, can you still pay your employees? Are you getting the money? Can you collect? Which means as part of your continuity plan, you start identifying your hot product and your customer base. I would say your customer base will almost automatically tell you what your hot product is. If you're only selling one product, then that's fine. But you still got to figure out, okay, where do I go from this project to the next customer? Where am I getting my customers from? How are they being affected by COVID? And what services or products are you obligated to provide? Some of you, I would not even be surprised, have offered other products that you weren't offering. I know there's some people that went into business just making face masks, trying to get those out. Some people started trying to make their own hand sanitizer. Okay. I believe there's some small microbreweries who actually stopped making beer and started making hand sanitizer, which made sense. If the restaurants were closed and people weren't out socializing, there was going to be no demand for their beer. So they looked at the product they made, they looked at the equipment they had, and they decided to come up with a different product or service to provide. And that is where you start taking into your business and actually realizing what are your key functions, what is the service you provide, what do you produce in generating revenue. The first thing is always your staff and knowing your priorities and needing to communicate. I have worked at various companies, and my primary over the last 30 years has been in the tax department. And when you're doing taxes for large corporations, the first thing you learn is what that mindset is for the amount of risk they're willing to take. When I was in St. Louis, I worked for a utility company. They wanted to do their taxes. They wanted to be sure they were in compliance, but they were not looking for too many shortcuts. If it was a tried and true tax saving plan, then they would implement it, but they were not going to be in a gray area. When I went to work for ExxonMobil, they lived in the gray area. They had over 150 tax attorneys alone, along with all of accountants, because every return they did was audited. So they prepared themselves, as they would say, filing the return was just the first step in what their tax liability was. Then they knew they had to go through the audit, then they had to go through appeals. That was the policy at Exxon. At Mobil, their policy was, we're going to make the return absolutely correct. We're going to defend it, and then we're going to be able to walk away from it because we'll know that we basically have read the law and implemented the best things. We're not going to, as I would say, actually argue the law with the government. Every company takes a decided view on what kind of risk they want to take with taxes. That is the same thing with what you're going to decide with your business. And that first thing is communicating with your staff. As I said, as we talk here, there's a couple of things I would think that hopefully by now, 9 months into COVID, you've identified who your key employees are. You figured out how to keep them happy. You have a procedure in case somebody comes in and tells you that they got COVID, okay? You know where they can go get tests. You know what the cost of that test is. And you understand, okay, if I got to quarantine and close my doors because there's too much close contact, what the ramifications is on my business or how I can operate from a different location. I would say when you look at the government and how they've handled it, most of us feel like they haven't handled it well. And I probably wouldn't argue that, but at the same time, they kind of got their hands tied. Back in March and April, their first decision was to shut everything down and hope to contain the COVID. And technically they did a good job, but it came back. If you look at the numbers today, they're worse than anything that was occurring in March and April. But these governments are not going to close the doors again. They know that there's too many businesses out there who just will not survive if they close them again, if they don't give them the proper aid. Whether or not that $600 or that $1,200 check or this second stimulus package will help. at the end of the day, there has been a decision to be made that we're going to take the risk, which is why you had so many people travel. Some people just said, I'm tired of this. I'm going to travel, and the prices are too good. But you need to know what your priorities are for your business, what your staff is doing, how much risk they're taking, and you need to communicate whether you want to keep them safe, how to stay safe. The cost benefit analysis, deductibles and specific event coverage. Consider benefits of business interruption. And there are benefits, okay? For example, when they went into COVID, when they went into the shutdown, they moved the due date for taxes from April 15th to July 15th. That gave me more time to do tax returns. But it also allowed that people who were always late, that always waited to October because of the 6-month extension, actually turned around and filed their returns in July. And it gave me a chance to actually get new business because people realized, well, I got more time, I want to start investing, or I want to start recommending people. Because once they started getting those checks, they wanted to know what they could do with it or make sure they were getting it. And for people who had not filed tax returns, they were knocking on my door saying, okay, I need to file my tax return because I want to get my money from the government. So there were benefits to COVID in many different ways, but there's always also, and this is key, if anything bad happens, you have to try and find the silver lining. And that means actually turning around and figuring out, okay, can I now move to a better location? Can I keep my data more secure going forward? Because I had gotten used to just keeping it on the desktop in the office. Now I am going to go to a cloud-based system to react and respond to those incidents and keep your operations going. Backup plans. You're going to be saying the same thing. Equipment failure, weather event, whatever it is, the first reaction when something bad goes on is, woe is why is me. But as a business owner, as this you're being your livelihood and hopefully you're doing something you love, you just look at it as another opportunity to do it even better than you were doing before. Because there's always things as you're going along that you wish you would have done, that you didn't take the time to do. And this is where you get strategic and actually implement those plans so you come out stronger and better. And the reasons and what this will do, it'll protect your reputation, protect sales and revenue. It'll help you keep customers. It'll improve your business. And the biggest thing, avoid lawsuits and legal liability. One of the reasons that the stimulus package hadn't passed, I'm quite sure y'all heard, was the fact that the Republicans wanted to pass an indemnification in the laws so that businesses couldn't be sued for how they handled COVID. In some of these states, especially in the states, places where they were doing essential business like providing food, they wanted those plants to stay open no matter what. And if somebody got COVID, they did not close down the whole plant, or they didn't make sure everybody got tested. They just quietly sent that person home and whoever they thought came in close contact, and they kept trying to operate that business. Well, in hindsight, a good lawyer would probably say you're legal, that the next person who caught COVID is your fault because you didn't go through all the safeguards of keeping me protected. And that's part of, even now, surviving this business plan. When one of your employees or you find out one of your customers has COVID, you really need to decide whether or not you need to quarantine. How you're going to react to that, because you don't want someone to turn around and have a lawyer say, hey, let's sue them. And there are going to be a lot of lawsuits. If this liability is not closed, there is no question there are lawyers just waiting for all of this to be over and start suing those businesses that did not respect all the rules required for quarantine and safe working conditions for their employees. As a business owner, it's something that you need to think about, and it's something you're going to wrestle with as this continues. Now, this slide just talks about the probabilities. I will tell you, as I started this, when I tell you about a business continuity plan, I usually like to refer to it as it's like estate planning, or it's like a succession planning. At the end of the day, sooner or later, you're going to have to hand your business off to someone, or you're going to have to close it. So you should know what's important in your business, what the value is going to be. But that natural disaster will make you face that possible closure or that disruption in service a whole lot faster with no preparation. Here's some of the costs over the last few years of some of the natural disasters. And then down here you see COVID. When it says 16 trillion in costs, they're just saying to the economy. In other words, the additional medical costs that they're covering, the care plans that they're giving out, which is now we're up to about 7.4 million in stimulus bills between local and federal governments. They even have concluded that there's $4 billion in additional burial costs because of the additional deaths that have occurred this year over previous years, all adding up to almost 16 trillion in additional costs. Okay, which is why I can tell you without a doubt, they're probably never going to shut everything down, or you just see it in certain areas. This slide here, this is just in case you haven't gotten the seriousness or understanding why it's important to have a continuity plan. It kind of tells you what happened to businesses after disaster. 43% never reopened, closed within 2 years. 75 without the plan failed within 3 years. Because, I'll say this, when you fail 3 years after disaster, most of these businesses don't even realize that that's what they didn't recover from. Which is why it's important now for you to look at this as an opportunity. In other words, if you successfully recover from this disaster, your reputation, your reliability, your dependability will be tenfold. For my company, one of the other big challenges was we operate in Houston and California. And I was going out to California regularly to meet with clients. All of a sudden that wasn't possible. Next thing I know, I'm on Zoom. Now, usually I love a conference call. I don't have to get dressed up. I could be kind of just sitting around, relaxed and have a call. Now, if I'm gonna be faced up and seeing people, I'm like, oh, is that shirt clean? Does it look pressed? Did I cut my hair just right? You know, usually, and considering I don't like the way I look usually on most of my pictures, I'm never happy with my headshots. So now I got to turn around and probably go out and get a professional headshot. In other words, things that you were never concerned about before, you end up having to change. For a CPA, his biggest selling factor is walking in that door and looking like a businessman. And quite honestly, you want your CPA to look like the most conservative person walking in the room. You don't want a lot of flash. You just want to know that he's going to do it right. And you could do that when you walked in and you met people and you had a conversation. Now I've had to learn how to do this through the computer, just over the phone, and learning how to read people and understanding what they needed, and realizing that you really only got one shot to impress a person, because they don't have a lot of time to talk to you. So you need to give them an idea that they can run with and say, okay, yes, I want to go with you. It wasn't a lot of back and forth and not a lot of meetings, not a lot of planning, just immediately taking that opportunity and going with it. And I think the hardest thing is usually when I'm thinking and trying to save people money, when I'm on a conference call, I usually get up and walk around. But when you're actually on Zoom, you kind of sit there, you kind of have to have that idea, and it doesn't look, you never want to give the impression that you're pulling it out of thin air. Same thing with whatever business you're running. The way you're operating now is the new normal, and you have to figure out how to convey that you really know what you're doing, which in many ways, you only get one shot at it. It is a great opportunity, but you have to be ready, which is what this slide is saying. This quote, although all catastrophes have an initial negative impact on value, paradoxically, they offer an opportunity for management to demonstrate their talent in dealing with difficult circumstances. If you're running your business, you have talent, you are smart, you know how to do the day-to-day operations. The question now is if you can be strategic and actually implement what needs to be done to keep your business going. So you have 6 steps to a business continuity plan: preparing the plan, defining your plan objectives, identifying and prioritizing potential risk and impacts. Developing
Oh,
business continuity
let's see
strategies.
how I can. Trying to see how I can put it on my phone.
All right. I'm sorry. I think I can hear you, Kimberly. All right.
I'm
I
sorry, that's not
apologize.
me.
All right. Developing business continuity strategies, identifying teams and defining tasks, testing, exercising, evaluating, and updating your plan. For example, and I'll go with the last one first. I told you when I was at Exxon, they were planning for the pandemic back in 2005. They actually thought that, I think if you remember SARS, that had everybody in Asia wearing masks, they were expecting that to kind of get over into America, and they were preparing for it. And every year that I worked there for the next 4 years after they implemented the first plan, is they actually would spend 2 days where they said, okay, let's assume that something's happened. Do we have the right phone numbers to contact the right person? Are you taking your laptop home on a regular basis? Do you have everything backed up? Can you get everything online? Or do you have to have everything in paper? And that was one of the big things. When you think about accountants, we love paper, but in truth, a lot of us have had to go paperless. You want to be in the cloud. You don't want to have a lot of paper because you never know where you're going to be at. I get a call from a client. They just want an answer. So I need to be in the cloud so I can just look at my phone, go into the right app, pull out their return and give them an answer, or go into their accounts and give them a report. They don't really want to hear that, well, I'm not right in front of my computer right now, or I need to call somebody, or we're in quarantine. They just want their answers when they want them. Okay. And it's those little things that will allow you that once you prepare the plan, define what are the objectives. And when I say the objectives, what's important on you staying open as a business, recognizing the risk and the impacts, and then developing that strategy. So the first part is identifying the elements you already know: your organizational charts, company confidential requirements, team and team member information, business insurance, vital records, raw materials. I'm gonna step back for a moment. There was a time when when I was growing up, every business either had a safe deposit box or they had a lock box where they kept things. Even if you have a lock box or or some kind of safe in your business, I would probably say if it's confidential records, if it's not in the cloud, you probably need to keep it at a different location. When most of the business started going paperless, they did not keep the servers on site. They're going to keep them somewhere else, even if they own all the servers. That was just another additional cost that they thought they needed. Team and team member information. When something happens, can you call everybody? If you can't reach them, who's the next person that's important that can tell you they're okay? Business insurance. Do you have the proper business insurance, and can you get to those papers after something has happened? Vital records. In other words, basically your licenses to operate your business, your business license, maybe a software license, and for a lot of us, our passwords. Most of us save our passwords in our laptops. If your laptop is destroyed because of the flood, do you have the password somewhere else? Most of us don't want to write it down on paper, or we commit the cardinal sin of having everything having the same password. Which is why if you work in corporate America, they got you changing your password 2 or 3 times. And now, as you do a lot of passwords for like with the banks and things like that, they do double, double verification. In other words, they want to send you a text and give you a code to prove you are who you are. Okay.
They call it two-factor authentication.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, that was Blair, because his job is to make sure that I say the words right. As I talk, I might mumble. So thank you, sir. Your raw materials. Do you know if your vendors are going to be able to get you the information you need, or the product you need to continue operating? Your supply list. You might have it all in your head, or you might have it on your phone, but do you have it somewhere else that will maintain the safety of it? Do you have it backed up? Your customer list. The customer list is the most important thing here, and it's really important for 2 reasons. Somewhere down the road, when you made a lot of money, and you're tired of doing this thing that you love, you're going to want to sell your business. And your customer list is going to be the most valuable thing you sell to the next person. In many respects, that is what the next person is buying, access to your customer list. You need to be able to know who your customers are, who your best customers are, and how to get in contact with them, and letting them know that you're there for them. And don't worry, business can keep going as needed because you'll be there to supply what they need. Okay? Which goes to the processes: critical, power, water, phone, internet, fuel, email, critical software. These are all things and the elements that you need to include when preparing to plan. Where you have these items, do you have them available? And do you have backups? Develop detailed list of company information, account numbers, points of contact, basically the same thing. Fire, ambulance. I think most of us look at fire and police is like, well, I'll just call 911. And that's probably true. But when you talk about hospital and poison control or hospital, do you know where you can go get your free COVID test? The closest one to your office? Or are you going to have to charge? I believe the cost has gone down, but if you went to an urgent care and you actually pulled out your medical card, they were going to charge your medical insurance $1,000. However, if you paid cash, they might only charge you $190. So you needed to know, are you going to go to an urgent care? You're going to go to a hospital? You need to know, when you're talking about COVID, what is your plan of action if, heaven forbid, your business is hit with COVID and you have to quarantine and you have to start picking up certain things for your clients. I think one of the little known things about COVID is, technically, if one of your employees you think has COVID, you really need to get them to take 2 tests. One to see if they have it, and then one to prove that they don't have it anymore. Now, they might not have many symptoms. They might feel better after 10 days. But in truth, you should not let them back into your business or in close contact with you until they've taken another COVID test that came back negative, which means that's an additional cost, not 1 test, but 2 tests, let alone deciding how many other your people you're going to decide whether you're going to pay for that cost or make them pay it. I would say most businesses will always pay that cost for their client, for employees, simply because they want to be on the safe side that everything is done right. Manufacturing systems, equipment providers, software providers. And the last one, you'll hear this a lot: alternate site and offsite storage locations. If everything's in the cloud, you still want to maybe back it up and just have it on a portable drive that you either put in your home or maybe you put it in your car, but you don't keep it at your main business location. You want to be able to, if heaven forbid you had to, you could go pull that information up and pretty much get up and running within 24 to 48 hours. That's where you get into identifying and prioritizing potential risk and impacts. Calculate your recovery time objectives. If you have to quarantine, you know that's basically 10 days. If you got to close your business, or if you want to open it, do I get other staff to come in here and do the job? Do I have to get my place totally desanitized or sanitized? And if I do, who am I going to call to do it, or am I going to do it myself? Can I get the products necessary to do a good deep clean on my premises? As we know, the longer you close, the less sales you get. And that's where you get into conducting a business impact analysis. Outline the impact of your business losing critical processes and systems. You need to know what you're going to do. For me, for the accounting, I'm using QuickBooks Online. So I need to know if QuickBooks went down, what would be the problem? I use the Drake software. For whatever reason, they had a serious problem during tax season, and they were actually down for 2 weeks during the prime part of tax season. They were like, hey, they got a virus. They were trying to restore it, and their backups didn't come back online correctly, or I guess they had the virus, but for 2 weeks, we didn't have it. You're caught. So you're basically telling your clients, hey, either you're going to tell them that you got a virus, or you're going to tell them, no, give me a little bit more time. But the bottom line is, you need to be proactive in making sure that things that you had promised now are going to be held up, and explaining to your clients why they're going to be held up, and understanding what the problem is on that side. okay? And then actually talking to your business provider, and I'll give them credit. They spent a lot of time this fall actually telling us everything they're doing to make sure that that never happens again. And as far as improving their backup systems, explaining what happened, what's going to be backed up, making sure those systems do not fail again, and guaranteeing that we can keep filing returns during the busy season. Identifying project potential risk and impacts. What kind of threats your business at risk? Do you have security policies? We operate, as I said, operate out of California, and with the legalization of cannabis, security policies are a big thing. Now, for our cannabis business in California, those were declared essential businesses. So all the dispensaries, the manufacturers of cannabis products, the growers kept operating. And they had to operate during that process, but also worry about whether they had COVID or not, or whether they could actually operate, even though they were allowed to be open. But in times like that, and you got different people doing things, or someone gets sick, you're worried about your security. A lot of additional security. Depending on what your business is, you need to know, is everything secure? What's your backup? What's your operating procedures, your training procedures? And I would like to say, with COVID, we're all now sitting here saying, okay, when are we going to take the vaccine? When will this be over? Well, they just reported today that they were supposed to get to 20 million people before the end of the year, and they're only at like 11 million people vaccinated. So when it rolls out to the general public, the earliest we were hoping, we were thinking April. Now you may be saying, oh, no, it's maybe going to be maybe May or June. So things getting back to any kind of normal, since we're still relying on the government to actually do it right, is iffy, which means that you need to understand and mitigate or lessen the impact if your business has been adversely affected in your day-to-day operations with COVID, or recognizing that the potential closure of your business because somebody catching COVID is still going to last all the way through to possibly May or June, okay, halfway through the year. Which gets into developing business continuity strategies. Develop parameters for your strategies to respond to each risk in your business impact analysis. And when we talk about business impact, in other words, are you worried about, in Dallas, you're not really worried about a hurricane, you might be more worried about a tornado. And now we're talking primarily about COVID. So your really main concern is, if an employee comes in, maybe they were with their family, they were celebrating, and they come in with COVID, and how that's going to affect everybody. Do you have to close your doors? Do you have to get the test? Those are the impact analysis and what you're going to do. Do you have a plan in place? Since we're in the middle of COVID, I would hope that every one of you actually know exactly what you're going to do if one of your employees comes up with COVID. You've probably already faced it, but was that plan that you had in effect, was that just something you went on off the fly? I will tell you, the first time one of my employees thought they had COVID, it was just made up as I went. Then I turned around and actually laid out what the plan was. I knew exactly, I wrote down, where do I want them to go to get the test? Because I didn't want them to just go anywhere to get the test. I wanted to be sure that they weren't going to take a rapid test. Rapid test has too many false negatives. I wanted them to take the deep nasal swab, because I wanted to be sure that they weren't going to have it, which meant that I needed to make sure I had the cash on the side to pay for it, where they were going to go. Okay. That's where you prioritize your objectives and your response order. Identify the location for managing and operating in the event of a disaster. For most of us, it's operating out of the home. I don't know about you, but that's not a thing for me. Thank God I'm in an office that we're all pretty much in individual offices and pretty spread out, so I can keep coming into work every day. We were pretty much going paperless. Well, actually, we are pretty much paperless, but getting our clients to actually upload their documents and just send it to us over the internet we've been able to fast track that. So I don't have to have clients coming in. When I need to talk to them about their return, I can get them on Zoom, or I can share it with them and go over it with them while they're looking at it. But I don't have to worry about someone coming into my office and I'm not worrying what they've been doing. Which I'll give you one of those examples. Early on, I had a client come in and I knew he was an engineer. So, I'm thinking he's working from home and everything like that. Turns out he got laid off. So we're sitting there talking. I had my face mask on. He didn't want to put his face mask on. I said, that's okay. We sit across the table from each other. Then he tell me, well, I've been driving Uber. I look up, I say, you've been driving Uber? And I'm thinking, what you doing in here without a mask? I didn't throw him out, but all of a sudden I realized, no, there's no being nice and saying, okay, as long as I'm masked up, I'll let that go. Everybody comes in needs to be masked, whether you get a negative reaction or not. And if they don't, then you say, hey, well, give me a call and we'll do it over the phone. But how to operate in the event of a disaster or not really knowing who you're coming in contact with during this COVID means that you need to be hyper vigilant, okay? Which means that you need to identify alternate suppliers, storing those vital records offsite. And if need be, if you've got a very complicated business, pre-negotiate agreements so that you can, in case you need to call them, they won't jack up the price on you because they know that you're over the barrel. You almost say, hey, if I need to come to you, what that price is, I don't need it to go up. As we all know, the price, or nobody could get toilet paper or Lysol. Who would have thought that you needed to stack up with maybe 2 months supply because all of a sudden you couldn't get toilet paper out of the grocery store. But it's those things that you have to learn how to plan and mitigate and develop a strategy for. Address employee and community needs during the disaster and post-disaster. And I think the community needs is, if you're into service, helping other people who have lost their jobs and they need help with food, handing out food, things like that. And also understanding, just like there's the federal stimulus plans, almost every state government, every local government, and even some nonprofit organizations and large corporations have had plans. The last couple of the slides towards the end of this presentation is going to talk about, I'm sorry. I had to pause for a minute. I apologize. But it's going to talk about what those items are. So as we talk about these items, again, it's just there's a lot of slides here. The key here is just to critically identify, evaluate your strategy. Is it cost effective? Can you implement it? Address multiple threats. IT. In today's age, everybody needs to know that their IT is right. Power supply backup, nightly backups. Identifying your team. Developing tasks for your team. In other words, one thing corporate America has found, and I believe it will be interesting to see what happens to the real estate market, having their workers work from home are making them more productive than when they were in the office. So a lot of business owners are thinking, do I really want these people to come back? Because they were doing more work when they were working from home. And I don't have to worry about deciding whether I need to let you off to take care of a sick child, to go to the doctor. A lot of people are saying, okay, I need to do this work. I'll do it in the middle of the night. Business owners are realizing I don't need to be standing over your shoulder as long as you know what your job is, what your task is, how to complete it. Okay. Who can you trust? Test and evaluate and update your plan on a regular basis. It is a critical investment. Now we get to the network. And why I say about the bankers, because at the end of the day, I guess, first thing, I hope everybody, if you're in a business, you're using a business checking account and not your personal account. If you are, you need to switch to a business account, okay? And develop that relationship with your banker, because it's much easier for you to be able to go in there and he says, hey, okay, you got a business, then I need to give you a credit card, maybe with a certain amount of limit. Develop credit and leverage for your business. So in tough times, if the money's not coming in, do you have enough of a credit line on your credit card, or can you get a credit line to actually continue operating if you had to, and pay the bills off of there and then pay it over time. As we know, there was not just the PPP, there was also the SBA loans. I actually bought the business here with an SBA loan, and part of that program was you didn't have to make payments for 6 months. So I didn't have to worry about making a payment. Now, that payment was going through my bank and it was automatically going out. They called me, they told me what forms I needed to fill to get the automatic payment stopped. They took care of it. When it was time to start it back up, they sent the forms to me to fill out and send it back. Made it just as simple and as easy as possible. Okay? If you got a good banker, they're going to call you and see how they can help you, because it is in their best interest to keep you open. But you have to have a business checking account, or at least some business accounts, for them to go that extra level in helping you. Okay? CPA. Most of you will think about CPA, you'll think about tax savings, but also maintaining your accounting, because you need certain P&Ls and statements to get loans. And some of you know how to come up with your profit and loss. You know how to do projections. Others don't. The key is, with this whole thing, is what you don't know, you need somebody that you can go to and ask to get what you need. Because when you filling out for that loan, or you filling that form for that grant, you know, it's usually late at night after hours, and you need to find somebody who can help you get this done. And they should be able to contact you with your financial planning, because you should be doing financial planning. And my last is a professional business organization. Just like today, the coalition is providing a great service in helping you understand what's important about surviving COVID-19. I will tell you that almost every Black Chamber of Commerce offers technical assistance, okay? And if necessary, how to get funding. I can tell you in California, most of the funding on helping students, small businesses, are going through a lot of the Chamber of Commerces, because they're like, okay, we don't know how to reach these minority businesses. You're a minority Chamber of Commerce. If they're tied in to those programs, then they're making sure they're getting to the right business owners. The bottom line is, you don't want to close your doors because you didn't figure out how to get the appropriate funds to bridge the gap. Okay? And that's establishing relationships with your banker, CPA, and professional business organization. All right. So, and here we're talking about, like I said, the second stimulus package, everybody's pretty happy. Everybody's gonna probably get a $600 check if you didn't make more than $75,000 adjusted gross income. But the PPP for businesses. However, you only get that PPP additional money is if through either the first, second, or third quarter, in comparison to each one of those quarters, your revenue dropped by at least 25%. So a lot of businesses who qualified earlier are not going to qualify, okay? But there's also state, local governments, and charities and large corporations that are offering loans and grants. Due to the George Floyd protests, banks and large corporations are deciding they want to help minority businesses. In other words, as you start your business continuity plan, I would say over the next month or so, you should spend the time to just find out what aid is there to help your business. All I did was a little Google search, and I came up with these resources in the Dallas area to help a business. SBA disaster loans, the LIFT Fund, People Fund, City of Dallas Small Business Continuity Fund. City of Fort Worth is offering something. Alice provides the opportunity to apply for grants up to $50,000 to support business growth. Salesforce carries small business grants. The Red Backpack Fund. In other words, 4 of these, I didn't even think they were doing anything, but either because of COVID or because of the protests this summer, they are out there ready to help minorities specifically, or just small business owners. So if there's one thing there are things out there to help you to survive COVID. And I would say you would be remiss if you finished by this time next year, if you don't look back on your business and actually take advantage of at least 2 of these opportunities of different sources of funding, then I would say that you are not planning for your business to stay open and to survive this disaster. That money's there, take advantage of it. I know some of us don't like debt, but there's a certain fine line between having a certain amount of debt and being debt free. On your personal life, I would say it's always more important to be debt free. But for your business, you should have a certain amount of debt at all times to optimize your funding capabilities. These last slides here are for personal. In other words, the Federal Disaster Emergency Response came up with a checklist. So as I was talking about a business continuity plan and what to do with COVID, these are the things for even for your personal household, kind of a checklist of what you should have to survive a disaster and the documentation that you should have. All right, I think, yes. So I want to thank you for giving me this time. I think I've used up all the time, and I'm going to leave it with our contact information. I know 3 of you will get a chance to do one-on-one, and we can talk and I can help you. But if you want to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to spend time with you. I would definitely say contact Blair, because he's going to be the one to make sure that I get back with you and give you the information you need, and make sure that we can talk and provide any advice or service that you think you need for your business to help you survive, even if it's trying to find some additional funding for you, because the money's out there. You need to go out and get it.
At this time, we are at our Q&A portion of the event before we wrap up. And I have just a few questions that have come to me privately in the chat. The first question, Mr. Lane, is, you spoke about risk. As a young person thinking of entrepreneurship, should I wait to explore my business idea, or are there specific things that I can do to help mitigate risk while starting up?
I would say yes, you can mitigate while you start up. I would say there's a couple of things with that. The first thing is, when you start up, you want to make sure, because as you start a business, there's only your personal credit. Mm-hmm. So getting the right funding, getting the right insurance, and not paying an exorbitant price for that is making sure your personal credit is in line. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you improve your credit, it will help you along. When I got my loan, I walked into the bank, they looked at my credit and they said, "Oh, well, we're gonna give you a credit card with a $20,000 limit," because my credit was in good standing. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I would tell you the first thing is to improve your own personal credit before you open that business.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Bowden.
It's just kind of interesting. It would be interesting to know what type of business, because some businesses, because of this COVID situation, some businesses people are clamoring for. So you might want to, push the envelope versus others, businesses that you had always wanted to do, like opening up a club or a restaurant. Right now might not be the right time, but that has something to do with it as well.
Thank you.
Good point.
The second question we have is, you spoke about the benefits of COVID-19. What were some specific benefits that businesses were able to take advantage of, or that they should explore?
Okay. The first one is the PPP loan. If you had been in operation the previous year, they basically were willing to give you 2.5 months. So they basically, whatever your annual payroll was, divided by your yearly payroll, divided on a monthly basis, it multiplied by 2.5. They were going to give you that money, and all you had to do was pay your employees. Wow. They just passed a law saying that now you get to take the deduction that actually covered those employee expenses. So that's free money that you got. You got to pay your employees out of pocket, so you were making 100% profit on your revenue for anything that they were doing for you. Like I said, if you had an existing SBA loan, they were willing to waive it. I know down here in Houston, I know some businesses that went and got loans from the city of Houston and from this from the county, and those loans were allowed them to pay down some of their credit card debt, because and now they have debt, but now it's at 1 or 2%, and they got to pay it back over 30 years instead of having credit card debt. they're much more flexible. COVID, if you get the right funding, should make you much more flexible and liquid to go on when things actually pick up.
Next question. How often should I review my business continuity plan?
I would say, I'd probably say at least once a year. And I would be remiss to say more than once a year. Some people, I've heard people make the argument that it's 2 times a year. In Houston, the policy basically is because of hurricane, you review your continuity plan before the hurricane season starts. Okay. If I was in St. Louis, I would be reviewing it before winter started. Okay. So it kind of depends on where you're at, but I would say at least once a year, unless you have a drastic change or an expansion to your business. Once a year would be more than good enough.
And who should review her continuity plan, Mr. Lane?
I would say you as the CEO or president of the company, you're the one who should review it. If you want somebody outside to help you with it, then I would say call us.
Okay.
Or I would say get your CPA if you didn't want to call us. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. And when you spoke about QuickBooks earlier, there's a question here. Where should you back up financial documents in case QuickBooks or other software goes down?
Okay. If you're using QuickBooks Online, they have quite a few backups. So, and you can store most of your documents online with them. So you usually do not have to worry about actually backing up your financial statements. But what I would recommend is your bank statements that you download electronically and you kind of reconcile, and the reports you get out of QuickBooks. I would keep them electronically on a backup data, basically just a drive. In other words, you want to be able to go back and say, well, this is how much money I made, this is what I did, and maybe that customer list. Okay. QuickBooks has an excellent backup. Now, if you're using a desktop, you're still using a desktop, then you should probably back it up on a separate drive. But I would also say probably 2 separate drives, and you keep them in 2 different locations and not at your office.
Okay. Next question here. What key elements should a plan contain for an online business for a single employee? So it sounds like she's a sole proprietor.
So I would say the first thing is, if it's an online business, is making sure if there's a disruption to your power, how do you get back online? What is the backup for that business? So let's say if you're going through Amazon or Etsy, I'm quite sure they have it backed up, but I would say that's the main thing. I'd make sure you got your customer list in that online system. I probably would print it out and make sure I had it somewhere else. And when I say print it out, maybe not make it paper, but at least save it on a backup drive, because you want to know who your customers are and who you can contact. And if you're the only one, then I would say then you better be sure you got good medical. And I hope you're getting you're getting your physical every year. Okay.
We have a few more.
One other thing with that is, like, we have Comcast out here. You know, you might want to, when you're evaluating your whole business plan, see if it's worth putting that business and that internet on a business plan where if you lose power, for example, with Comcast, they have to. Some of us might be out of internet for days, but a business plan or a business account, they have to bring that up within a number of hours. That can kind of help mitigate your exposure if things start collapsing around you.
That's a great point, Mr. Bolden. We have another question. What are some key documents needed when applying for the PPP or other COVID relief programs?
Primarily is your tax returns and your payroll filings, your 941 forms. They want to be sure that you actually had employees. And if you're a single business, and even if you're just a sole proprietor, they're going to take the income earned off your Schedule C that was filed with your 1040 return. And they're going to look at that as your salary and then give you a certain amount of PPP based on that.
The next question. I have noticed that a few of these grants and loans wants you to be in arrears or in trouble. What if you just need a bigger cushion?
If you need a bigger cushion, then I would definitely recommend going to the SBA and either going to the SBA because they understand that whole idea of a bigger cushion. And if you don't want to be in it, so then you just get a regular loan, or some of those grants, I would say, actually expand your business. See if maybe if you got the money, you expanded your business, then they would say, oh, well, we need to help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Next question. Mr. Lane mentioned that all businesses should have some debt. Can he provide additional context on how much debt and what specific type of debt?
Okay. I would say every business should actually probably have somewhere between 20 to 30% of debt that's long-term. Okay. That means it's payable over a certain number of years. The key here though is when I say that, and this is why going back to the initial talking about having good credit,
Mm-hmm.
that you're getting that loan at a decent interest rate. Okay. The reason you told me, I said, go back to SBA. One of the programs with the SBA loan that they were having along with the PPP was if you qualified, they would give you a small loan, maybe as much as $150,000 to as low as $10,000, and you paid it back over 30 years at 1% interest. So I had some credit card debt. I rolled it all up and got that loan. Now I'm paying that at 1% interest. Now I'll pay it off before I need to, but I'm not paying that interest rate, the interest rate on that credit card.
Mm-hmm.
You should have a credit card, but I would say you want to keep that debt low. What you want to have is long-term debt at a good rate.
Okay. And our last and final question here is, should you have an LLC? That's the big question.
Okay. So if your business, almost every attorney, and I apologize if there's an attorney on here, they will always recommend an LLC because it's the easiest and cleanest one to actually do things with from a legal standpoint. Okay. From a tax standpoint, most of us will tell you we would want you to convert that. You can have an LLC, but we want to treat it as an S corporation. Okay. The last thing we want you to be doing is actually a Schedule C. You should only have a Schedule C or sole proprietorship if you already have a real job. In other words, you're just doing a little something on the side and supplementing your business. Mm-hmm. That LLC is perfectly fine and doing the Schedule C. But the real question is not whether you should have an LLC, is what type of business entity you should have. Sole proprietorship, partnership, S corporation, or corporation. And without knowing what your actual business structure is, what's going on, it's perfectly fine to start off as an LLC. But from a tax perspective, I would probably most likely tell you should be an S corp or a corporation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lane and Mr. Bolden. At this time, we're going to turn it over to our first Vice President of Programs, Retta Washington McCoy. Retta, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Great presentation. There actually was one additional question, and I think we do have time. We're actually a little ahead of time. That's great. Okay. So there was one additional question. I think we do have time to ask that one. If you,
I see it. I'm sorry. I see it. It was hidden down at the bottom. Mr. Lane, the question is, can you elaborate on the application process for the PPP and other COVID relief programs?
Okay. Is one reason why you saw the first thing I said, which your network is a bank. All the PP programs were actually, while they said they were administered through the SBA goes through banks. Every SBA loan normally, except for the economic disaster loan that they gave out, that was a small amount of money, you had to have a member bank that would either you already had a prior relationship with them or were willing to take your application and submit the paperwork to the SBA for you to get your loan. So a lot of minority businesses I knew, they actually had to get on the phone and call various banks because either if you were with Chase or Wells Fargo, if you were late, they weren't taking any more applications. I had one client, I actually called all over the country trying to find another bank that would take them in that did not have that they did not have an account with. There were banks willing to do that, but you had to reach out and search for them. So most of those, I would say, are going through a bank that's a member of the SBA, affiliated with SBA. Okay. All right.
Those are all of the questions at this time, Rita.
Okay, awesome. If there are no more questions, we do want to give Mr. Lane and Mr. Bolden an opportunity to have final words or any final thoughts that you want to leave with our participants this evening, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up and hear from our president at the end, at the close of the program. But Mr. Lane or Mr. Bolden, are there any final words that you would like to share with our participants as it relates to how we help businesses survive COVID-19? It's been a lot of information, and it's interesting. I do want to add this. One of my girlfriends actually started a business this year, so during this time, and her parents are business owners, and they have great relationships with banks. And it's interesting you mentioned the banks a lot, because when she got ready to start her business, even though they've had these great relationships, her bank kind of gave her pushback. And so I appreciate you reiterating the importance of establishing those really, really good, solid relationships, because we never know how they will go for us. So great information. But Mr. Lane, Mr. Bolden, any final words?
I think I hit most of the points. I repeated them. I'm actually going to let Blair, I'm going to throw him under the bus and see if he has any last comments. I just would like to thank the coalition for the opportunity again to be a presenter and to share my information with you. Blair, you're on mute.
Mr. Bolden, I think you're on mute.
Mr. Bolden, yeah.
I'd like to thank the coalition as well for allowing the Emerge Financial Group to come and speak. I don't have anything else to add at this time, but I would encourage you guys to reach out to either myself or James if you guys have any other questions that may be of benefit to you guys in these challenging times.
Awesome. Well, we certainly appreciate you all spending your part of your holiday season with the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Dallas Metropolitan Chapter. Again, like I said, this has been an amazing presentation, a lot of information to digest, and I can still think of like 1,000 questions I have, but we will hold those for a later time. At this time, we do want to make sure that on behalf of our president, myself, our chair, and moderator for the evening, and all of the committee members, we want to sincerely thank our sponsor, Coca-Cola Company, for allowing us to be able to bring this type of information to our communities. Mr. Lane, Mr. Bolden, we thank you and the Emerge Financial Group for your presentation and for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. And at this time, we are going to announce the 3 lucky people that will be able to have an opportunity to speak with Emerge Financial Group one-on-one, and you can actually dive into your very specific questions that you may have about your own business. We will get your contact information and make sure that, and actually, if you can do me a favor, if you did not pre-register, if you can actually stay on, don't drop the Zoom if I call your name, so that I can get your contact information, that'd be great. But the 3 lucky recipients this evening are going to be Margie Collins. I believe she is still on. I saw her. Shamika Stevenson Davison. I hope I am not messing up anyone's name. And DC Global Group. So if you will please stay on before. Thank you, Ms. Collins. Stay on. We'll get your contact information, and that way I can give you more information about Emerge Financial and how you will contact them. We also want to let everyone know that if you pre-registered, you will receive the PowerPoint this evening. The slides that Mr. Lane and Mr. Bolden had will be shared with you in their entirety. And again, if you have questions, you'll be able to go back and ask them those questions. You again can see their contact information on our website on the screen. And at this time, I am going to turn it over to our amazing chapter president, Ms. Sonia Irby, and she is going to close us out for the evening.
Thank you so much, Madam First VP. I want to thank again Mr. Bolden, Mr. Lane. Thank you so much for lending us your expertise tonight. Thank you to everyone who helped put together the program tonight. Excellent job. For everyone who joined us, all of our participants, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We do want to leave you with a final call to action. As business owners and entrepreneurs, think about what you can do to help move financial advocacy priorities forward in your community and how you will use the information that's been shared with us tonight to survive the impacts of COVID-19. We want to invite you to stay connected with us, follow us on all of our social media channels, and be sure to engage with us for some future programming around this same topic of financial literacy, as well as our obesity awareness program coming in January. And if you're looking for an opportunity to get out and exercise, please join us for our virtual 5K walk in February as well. More information on all of our social media channels. And again, thank you for joining us and have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your holidays.